One day after the president delivered the State of the Union address right here in Quincy, Mayor Mike Troup gave his State of the City address.
He touched on everything from retail to infrastructure. At News Since 5, WGEM's Dylan Smith has the #1 thing the mayor says he'd like to see happen next year. So Dylan, what is that?
Daniel and Raja, Troup's answer was housing, and now in conversations with some of the city's largest employers, Troup says housing is a frequent topic of discussion. And this afternoon, he also looked back at some of the successes in 2023.
I'd like to see some more apartments, townhomes, condos.
In the last year, one project in particular helped fill part of Troup's desire for more housing. In his remarks to about 100 at the Elks Lodge this afternoon, Troup touted the Brewhouse Townhome project. But that project alone, Troup says, simply won't cut it.
We're talking to developers, and I think they will start announcing some of their own projects.
Some of his largest touching points included the opening of Target back in August and the launch of recycling drop-off sites in town, which he says saved taxpayers about $1 million.
Recycled volume in less than a year increased 22.5% from the previous years to 604 tons of material being dropped off.
Troup also says Adams County tourism is at an all-time high, raking in more than $130 million in the last year. Nearly 90 new businesses opened in Adams County in 2023, and 16 in 2024 already. Outside of Troup's remarks to the public, there was one last question to ask him afterwards. So are you going to seek re-election?
Monday at 8.
That's when we'll find out?
Yeah.
In 2024, Troup says he'd like to continue to see retail grow, but again, housing is #1 on his wish list, and he'll announce his political future at the American Legion on Monday. Daniel?
All right, thank you very much, Dylan. And we have more on Troup's address on our website, WGEM.com.